Hello, my friend. Welcome back to another episode of the Scholar Budget Podcast, where we help students to earn a debt-free degree. And today we are diving into the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, the gateway to the money that we need to pay for college. And of course, we had to find the best of the best, the individual who is well-versed, well-knowledgeable about this process, because we know that the FAFSA can be a little scary, but we want to get rid of all of those fears, all of those negative mindsets, so that parents and students can get this application done. So who are we talking to? Well, Daniel Barkowitz is the Assistant Vice President of Financial Assistance and Employment at the University of Miami. He has served 35 years in institutions of higher education. Some of his previous roles include Assistant Vice President of Financial Aid and Veterans Affairs at Valencia College, Director of Financial Aid at MIT, Associate Dean of Student Affairs for Columbia College, and Daniel holds the Financial Aid Administrator Certified designation. So Daniel knows what he's talking about, and he is going to lead us into a conversation that is really going to help us to understand what we can start doing now to get that FAFSA application done, all right? And Daniel isn't just about the FAFSA. Of course, he is a published poet. He's a musical theater actor, which I think is so awesome. And Daniel has 2 adult children and an adorable fur baby. So go ahead and grab your favorite notepad, your pen, your pencil, a snack, jump into this podcast, listen, take notes, but most importantly, take action. You're listening to the Scholar Budget Podcast, where we teach you how to earn a debt-free degree, grow your money, and claim every opportunity with your name on it. I'm your host, Raquel Bartoli. Let's jump right in. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing? How are you feeling today?
Doing great. Thank you so much, Rocky. I appreciate the invite. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, and I'm so excited that you're here with us because I know you have great knowledge and information to share with our parents and students as we get ready to navigate the waters of FAFSA once again. So, Daniel, can you start by telling us more about who you are and what it is exactly that you do?
Sure. So I am the Assistant Vice President of Financial Assistance and Student Employment at the University of Miami. And I've been in that position about 2 years, but I have dedicated my career to working in the field of higher education finance and really helping families who can't afford college get to college. And I've worked at a number of institutions. So in my career, it's been about 35 years. I've been Director of Financial Aid at MIT. I was Dean of Financial Aid at Columbia University in New York City. I worked for open access institutions in the state of Florida, like Valencia College. I've done consulting work on the IT side for financial aid, but really my whole career has been in the financial aid area. And so in my role at the University of Miami, I work very closely with our staff to make sure that we can help students who need that help attend the University of Miami and not feel like they can't afford it. I'm also very involved in my professional association. So I'm coming off a term as president of our Southern Region Association. So I'm very active and involved and work with a lot of my peers nationally, regionally, and in the state of Florida as well.
You're awesome. You are the go-to person that we all need so bad in our life. You're equivalent to, I'm a strong believer that everybody needs an IT person in their life. So luckily for me, my husband is that person. But everybody needs a Daniel in their life. So thank you once again, Daniel. We're so excited.
Rocky, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yes. And so I know that this may seem like everybody should know what the FAFSA is, but the truth is not everybody does, right? Unless you're in the space of education or you've gone to college yourself, you have no clue what the FAFSA is. So can you explain what the FAFSA is and why it's so important for students seeking a college education to really take this seriously?
Sure. So FAFSA is an acronym, and it stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And the important words there are free and federal. So I want to begin by saying, it's a free application. There is no cost to apply. You don't have to pay anyone to do it. It's a free application. So that's the most important thing. It's typically filled out by a student who's looking to go to college each year that they're in college. So typically it would start in your senior, if you're going right to college after high school, it would start in your senior year of high school. You'd complete the FAFSA to get ready to figure out how much financial aid you might qualify for. So it's your senior year, then you do it again your freshman year in college, your sophomore year, etc. But actually, it's the same application that a student going back to grad school would complete, or a student who wants to be a doctor and is looking for financial aid as an adult. Like, it's the same application. Everyone does this application. So I said free is one important word. Federal is the other important. So it's an application for federal financial aid. The reason that's important is because it is the single application that gets access to the billions, with a B, billions of dollars in federal funds. And most students assume that's only loans. It's not called the FAFSA, whatever. It's not only loans that you're applying for. You're applying for grants. You're applying for work awards. So it actually is all federal aid. The other important piece, though, is it's not the application for institutional financial aid necessarily. Okay. So some institutions may have a separate application for their type of funding. You don't want to forget that if you're a student. So as a takeaway, like FAFSA is step one, but it might not be the last step, because you want to make sure the institution you're applying to, if they have other applications, you apply to those as well.
Right. So I always think of it as like the gateway to additional funds, because some students will say, oh, my parents make a lot of money, or whatever they consider a lot, and therefore I'm not going to get any assistance, so why even bother? And so I've had to explain to students and parents that, listen, it's a gateway that opens up other doors. And so even scholarships, when you apply for them, one of the key questions is, did you complete your FAFSA? So thank you for breaking that down and letting us know, number one is free, and number one is that gateway that we have to unlock in order to unlock other levels of free money.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. And so how does the FAFSA application process work? Like, in the most simplest terms, with the simplest steps, how does it all work, Daniel?
So for the next 3 hours, we're going to talk. No, I'm just kidding. So this is also an interesting time to ask that question, Rocky, because we've just been through a pretty, I can't think of a better word than a pretty rocky year, right? Of FAFSA rollout. Not your kind of rocky, but it's been a really tough year for families. FAFSA is an online form, and it's done through your computer or your phone, preferably your computer. But that also has changed. Originally, it was designed as a paper form, and the federal government just went through a major rewrite of the FAFSA application. And for students who are going to college in 24-25, boy, they sure felt the burden of that rewrite. Now, hopefully things will be smoother moving forward. But the way it works for students is you log in online, you create an ID, you do your section, you invite your parents if you need to have your parents complete their section, or if you're a married person like I am, and maybe I'm applying for financial aid, I would invite my spouse to do the form with me. And then they do their section online. So it's designed to be a pretty easy application once it works appropriately. And frankly, it did for me this year. I applied, and it took me about 10 minutes to do my application. It's a pretty easy form. And you do it online, and much of the information is just brought right in for you. But it is an online application that the student has to do a section for, and whoever is a contributor, not a financial contributor, but an information contributor. So perhaps a parent, perhaps both parents, perhaps a spouse, they do their section. And then when you complete the FAFSA, you say all the schools you're interested in attending, not necessarily that you have applied for admission to or been admitted into. That's another trick, is a lot of students wait until they're admitted to do the FAFSA. That's a mistake. You want to do the FAFSA up front and put you can list up to 20 colleges, any of the colleges you might be thinking about applying to, so that is in their system and ready to go if and when you then apply for admission and get admitted to that institution.
Beautiful. So there's a couple of steps, and depending on your status, that will tell how many people play a part in getting your FAFSA application done.
Correct.
And Daniel, I remember being a student in high school senior year. I graduated 2003, and it was like a paper application that we had to fill out, and I did this all by myself. There was my mom didn't understand what was going on. Grandma didn't understand. Dad didn't go, my college advisor was there, but it was so frustrating. And every year I had to like redo it. It was like, oh my God, I gotta do my FAFSA. But the other part is like, well, you gotta get this done in order to get the money to go to school. But then the other part is like, oh my God, I gotta get this FAFSA. But we have to get it done, right? So people
Right.
like to make the process so much easier.
And I would say, another way of thinking about this is, sure, it takes an hour. Let's say it takes an hour of your time, but the possible return on that investment could be literally thousands and thousands of dollars. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, listen, if someone were to pay me $1,000 for an hour of my time, I would take
I
it.
do it, right?
So,
Yeah,
right. So
that's how
think
I
about
feel.
it as an investment in yourself, right? It's
Yep.
a job, maybe, but it's a job that's going to pay off in the long term.
Absolutely. And so what are some common misconceptions about the FAFSA?
Yeah, so you've named some of them. I think the first one is I earn too much, right? I'm never going to qualify for aid. Well, okay, so the reason that is a misconception is because people are most familiar with the Pell Grant. Pell Grant is sort of the basic grant, the basic opportunity grant the federal government gives to families who are in lower economic statuses, right? But that's not the only grant that's available. So if a family earns, 6 figures or higher, they might think, oh, there's no way I'm going to qualify. And
Right.
that's a misconception. The reality is, again, as I said, some institutions use the FAFSA and other information to give their own funding, and their funding goes much, much higher. So, you can't write yourself simply out of eligibility by saying I earn too much. The answer is if you need help applying, you should apply. That's
Right.
the first misconception. I would say another is, and this is funny, I hear this all the time from students, FAFSA turned me down for financial aid. Well, no. FAFSA doesn't make a decision about your financial aid. The colleges and universities do. We're given eligibility information about what you're eligible for, but the FAFSA is just a form. The FAFSA is not making decisions about what you may or may not be eligible for. We at the college do that.
Okay.
So really what you want to do is you want to be in touch with the institution. If you're struggling, if you can't afford it, we're the ones that can help you figure out if there's a combination of grants and scholarships or work opportunities, or even we'll talk about this, but the 4-letter L word, loans, right?
Yeah.
There may be a small loan that might be worthwhile,
Right.
as an investment in your future. So I think that's a second misconception, is that somehow FAFSA makes a decision. FAFSA is just a form. It's us at the colleges that put your financial aid, what's called a package together for you.
Makes sense. Awesome. And so it just, again, goes back to the FAFSA is the gateway to everything else. So don't count yourself out because as a parent, you think you make too much, or as a student, you think your parent makes too much. Just get it done and then go from there. And like, if you
That's
don't
right.
get the answer you want, well, let's keep utilizing resources and digging a little deeper, and just kind of going back to the reason why we're even here right now on this podcast, and that there's multiple ways to pay for school. And I want to encourage parents and students to not put all your eggs in one basket. Like, you want to get your FAFSA done, but don't be that student or parent that relies simply on the FAFSA when there are so many other tools, resources, and avenues to get the funding you need to pay for college. But we got to start early, from scholarships to programs to internships. All of those things help the student to get that debt-free degree. And so, Daniel, what types of financial aid can students qualify for through FAFSA? So once they open that initial door, that gateway, what other things come about from that?
Right. So the FAFSA opens up in many cases the application to federal aid, state aid, and institutional aid as part of that single application. So just talking that through, like, people again think that somehow most of the aid that's available to students is in the form of loans. That's not true. Actually, about 60% of the funding available for undergraduates is in the form of grants and scholarships. And the largest portion of that is institutional grants, institutional scholarships. So about 30% of the money that's out there nationwide is money coming straight from institutions to help their students. So by submitting the FAFSA, you've begun that process for most institutions. Some institutions may have a separate form, but most institutions use that FAFSA to get you eligible for their aid, their grant and scholarship as well. There's work awards. There's an opportunity to earn money in a job on campus. It's often called work study. That can be a great way to get some pocket money to help pay for expenses sort of during the year. It's a job that you work, again, right on campus. And there are loans, there are small student loans that are available as well. To the point you've raised, there are other avenues beyond just the FAFSA as well. So, applying to private scholarships, looking for other ways to help fund. In Florida, if you do the application, there is also what's called a Florida financial aid application that's required of graduating seniors, and that is with the state of Florida for them to actually determine your eligibility for Florida state funds. Different states around the country, I've worked in a lot of different states, they have their own state grant application process as well. So generally, when I talk to families, I sort of recommend 4 different kinds of applications. There's FAFSA. There is your state application if it requires one. There's the institutional application if it's required by them. And then finally, it's making sure you look at all those private scholarship opportunities that might be available so you don't miss out on those options as well. Right. And again, to your great point, a debt-free college is within reach as you think about this and as you plan. And I think the other piece that families often forget, and maybe we'll get to this later, is targeting your admissions application to an institution where you're going to be the star, so they will put money on the table to recruit you to come to that institution. And that might be a merit-based award that's not even based on your need. It's based on the fact that the school wants you there as part of their academic curriculum or part of their.
And all of that requires planning, preparation early, and just not waiting until the last minute. Because when you wait till the last minute, opportunities dwindle down. But when we're planning, preparing, and positioning ourselves early as parents, helping our scholars to understand that that A isn't just a grade on your report card. It's a representation of the hard work you put in, and we can flip that A into dollars. So let's do the hard work, right? And let's stay focused so we can get this money. Awesome.
Right. To respond to that too, Rocky, I think sometimes families think, well, I'm gonna, if I can't get into my dream school, then I'm not going to go, right? And remember that you as a student are the dream for some institution, right? And it may be that if you've struggled in high school, it may be that you go to community college for a couple of years and prove your worth, your academic worth, and then transition into a 4-year system. And community colleges in our country are great places to get a fantastic education. And in fact, again, people don't think about this, but community colleges have merit-based scholarships where they're trying to recruit talent to come to them. So you could go for free for a couple of years to community college, more than likely, even if you're a B average student, for example, and prepare yourself for entry into a 4-year university and actually have those first 2 years paid for.
Absolutely. And, I'm a big root for community college. Shout out to Miami-Dade Community College, Federal Campus, where we made it happen. And I enjoyed my experience. I didn't lack anything. At least I didn't feel like I was lacking anything. So yeah, awesome. And so, Daniel, as parents and students get ready to go into this season, especially our seniors, what documents and information do students need to have ready when applying?
So I would say the first thing is, and this is going to sound a little strange, but parents, don't be shy about sharing your Social Security number and your date of birth with your students. Here's why, right? And again, I remember, maybe you too, Rocky, I got so used to writing down my SSN when I applied for college that was the first time I ever memorized my Social Security number, right? And I couldn't tell you what my parents were, but right now on the FAFSA application, when I go through and invite my parents to complete the form with me, I have to put in their dates of birth and their Social Security numbers. And I bet most students don't even know their parents' date of birth, let alone their parents' Social Security number. So, don't be afraid to share that. Have in front of you copies of your tax returns for the last year that you completed them. For 25, 26, it'll be the 2023 tax return, just for reference. So you have that information, but really it's about making sure that you can prove your identity with your date of birth, your Social Security number, and your parents as well. And most importantly, and this is going to sound strange, know your legal name. And the reason I say that is because, Rocky, if you write Rocky, I bet that your Social Security card does not say Rocky.
I'm going to get rejected.
That's right, exactly. You want to make sure it matches. And especially for Hispanic families, right, where there may be, Garcia de Ramon, or the question is which legal name is actually on your legal identifying paperwork, because
Right.
that is going to be what matches or doesn't match against what the FAFSA is looking for.
Wonderful. I just because I'm a visual person, so would this be the best setup? Like if I'm a parent or guardian, I'm at the computer with my scholar, and I have my social security number, I have my tax return information, having their social security number, and we're together doing this. Would you say that's the best
I
case
would
scenario?
love that. I would love that if that were the case. That is the best case scenario. So, in fact, what you do is the student would do their section, they type in their section on the computer, they'd pick up the computer and hand it to the parent, who would then log in and do their section. That would be ideal.
Right.
You're sitting side by side. But that's not the only way you can do the form. So if you can't, if maybe you don't live with your parents, or maybe you're in a different space, or you start the application at school, there is a process where the student can do their section, send that
Okay.
email invitation, and then the parent can later log in and do
And do
their
their
section. It's not the only way, but to your point, it is the best way to be sitting with each other and doing it side by side.
Right. Beautiful. So we have options, but the best way is to kind of tag team together, because I know when you're going back and forth and it's like, oh, I have a question, you could just get it done. The goal is to just knock it out at one time, right? Versus going back and forth. And we know as busy people, things come up, and then before you know it, your seniors graduating and you still haven't done your application. So
And I just want to say one more word, Rocky, which is that
yeah.
especially for students who maybe, or scholars who may not live with their parents, or may have a rocky relationship, again, pardon the choice of words, but
Yeah,
a
it's okay.
difficult relationship with their parents, right? What
Yeah.
happens to those students, right? And I just want to reiterate that there is a place for you in this process too. So if your relationship with your parents is fraught, you're not living with them, you're living with a legal guardian, or maybe even just an uncle who's offered you a space to live, there is a process where you can identify that and ask the college to make you independent from your parents if that is your situation. So,
Nice.
FAFSA is designed literally for everyone. So don't think that because my situation is unique, there's not going to be a space for me. There is a space for you in the application.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because as I've worked with students over the past several years, that no student is like, everyone's unique, right? Even with my brother, when my mom passed away, it was time for us to do, his FAFSA, and him and his dad hadn't spoken in like years. And now we're trying to chase head down. And so I learned that over time, FAFSA has really seen that we're all unique and different and have different situations. And I always tell students, worst case scenario, like call FAFSA, call customer service, let them know this is my unique situation. Which door should I walk through? Because
That's right.
door number one is not for me. I'm not that student who has mom and dad home. I'm a foster care student, or, I'm homeless in a homeless situation, or even my parents don't talk, whatever the case is. So thank you for really pointing that out. FAFSA is here to help every student, every situation, but you have to speak up, call the number, and say, hey, this is my situation. What should I do?
Right. Or the other option is reach out to the college and university aid office. That's what we're here for too. So we can help guide you in terms of the application, what to do in your particular situation. Because ultimately, you're going to need to give us the documentation anyway. So partner with us, and we can help you navigate that road as well.
Awesome. Beautiful. And so how can students appeal their financial aid? Like, so I did my FAFSA and I didn't get as much as I thought I'd get, or just the numbers aren't never. Daniel, I need help. Do I just accept what I get? Can I appeal this? What are my options?
So there are lots of options, and I would say we've hit on a couple already. So one of them is that independent student who doesn't appear independent, right? There's an appeal option there. The other is, remember that FAFSA is looking at income from several years ago. So for the 26 academic year, as I said, it's going to look at 2023 income. Chances are things may have changed, not hopefully for the better, but sometimes not. Right? You mentioned when your brother's mother passed away, like there may be a loss of a parent. This happened to me as well when I was in college. My father passed away. And so trying to sort of tell that story, that's an appeal, right? All of a sudden that income's not available anymore. Or maybe your parents got divorced, or maybe, God forbid, someone lost a job. right? So there is an opportunity to appeal. It's called a professional judgment. So what you ask for of the college is how do they have, what's their appeal process for professional judgment? And you can come to the college and say, hey, here's my application, but something's different from that application. Something has changed. Or another thought is, maybe that year you had a source of income that you got that one year, but isn't going to reoccur. Like maybe someone had, I've seen this before, gambling winnings that one year, or they took a deduction from a pension, but it's not going to repeat. So those
Right.
kinds of things, those appeals are part and parcel of what the financial aid office works with. And generally, they'll have a form and an application process to show that information, or just talk
Okay.
to a financial aid officer and say, this isn't working for me. I need some more assistance. And something on my application didn't really give you the full picture. When my daughter went to school, my wife had a slip and fall and broke her hip, and she was on workman's comp for a fair amount of time. And so I had to write a letter of appeal to the financial aid officer at the
Look at that.
institution she was attending, saying, and of course I know how to do it, so it was a little easier for me. But here's the information about like why this is not a strong year for us, and we
Right.
need to consider that. And that that's part. It happens to all of us, and so that's really there as a safety net for you. It's another reason why, even if you think you're not going to qualify, it's worth applying, because something may happen. And you want to have that FAFSA in place as sort of a basic premise, so that if something does happen, you don't have to, in tragedy, go back and start the whole thing over again. It's already there as a safety net for you.
Beautiful. And Darius, so if I'm a student getting ready to go through the appeals process, I'm contacting the individual college or university's financial aid department to go through this process,
That's
right?
correct, because the professional judgment is the judgment of the financial aid officer at that individual institution. And you could find that, let's say I'm applying to 4 different schools and I'm trying to make a decision. Each school may have a different decision, and that's just the nature of how the system works.
Right.
So, that could be part of your consideration in terms of whether the school is willing to listen to your appeal or not. But that you want to provide the same information to all the schools and let them make their decision. But it will be a case-by-case, school-by-school determination.
Love it. So that professional judgment, go for it, and you never know what happens, right? Closed mouths don't get fed. So
Exactly.
Exactly. All right. And Daniel, are there common mistakes that can reduce a student's eligibility for financial aid? Like so common things that you're seeing, and these things are making the process more tedious, longer, and if parents and students would just try to avoid these things, there would be less like pulling your hair out type of stuff happening here.
So there are some sort of basic common mistakes that families make. And again, these are going to sound sort of silly, but one of them is the high school student who says, I have my bachelor's degree. There's a question that asks, do you have your bachelor's degree on the application? Remember, high school students who graduate with a high school diploma, probably not a bachelor's degree.
Right.
If you answer you have your bachelor's degree, you automatically remove yourself from a lot of federal aid. That's one. Number 2, I think, again, people tell you it's optional to put your social security number on your admissions application. Not if you're applying for aid, it's not optional. Because remember, I know we're concerned about our social security number, about revealing that information when we don't have to, but all of the information on the system is matched using that magic number. So writing in the wrong number, writing in the wrong name, writing in the wrong date of birth, that's all going to cause problems on the back end, which will delay your application. And I would say the third common mistake is waiting too long. So don't wait. Get the application in and done as soon as you can. For 25-26, there's been talk, we'll see, about the FAFSA going live again by October 1. That is the target date for launch. So you should be doing your FAFSA October 15th, October 20th, October 30th. I would not wait until April, because you're going to want to know the answer to your financial aid application in order to make your decision by May 1, more than likely. So, the more time you can give, the more you can check in and see what other paperwork might be required, the more time you'll have to do that appeal, to talk to the aid officer, do whatever might be necessary, and find an alternative financing strategies, and we can talk about those too, that don't involve a parent borrowing necessarily, but find other ways. But you got to start this process early. So, the more homework you can do up front, the better
Okay.
you'll do on the final exam, if you will.
Awesome. And is it true that like the longer you take, the less money you have access to because you
Yeah,
waited till the last minute?
that is true. There are two different kinds of financial aid funds. There's some funds that are guarantees, like the Pell Grant or direct loan. Those, there's always going to be money available. But there are other funds that are called what are called campus-based funds, where we as a campus get a certain amount of money from the federal government or from the state government, and once that money's gone, it's gone.
Right.
And we prioritize based on who applies first. So if you wait, right, your likelihood of qualifying for those types of funds is going to be vastly reduced. So yes, the earlier you get the application in, the better.
Nice. Heard that, parents. I hope you heard that, students, educators. Let's get our FAFSA done on time and let's not miss out on any of our coins. Get all that you can to pay for your education. And what are some resources available for students who might need help with their FAFSA application? Whether it's a student or a parent, where can they go? What do you suggest that they do?
So the first thing is I would check in with your high school guidance office. Often they will offer workshops or webinars throughout the course of the year on completing a FAFSA. I would also go to studentaid.gov. That's the
Okay.
government site, studentaid.gov. They have lots of information on FAFSA and FAFSA help. And then, I tend to do a whole bunch my name is all over YouTube. If you go look, you'll find workshops and webinars that I've done and others like me have done. I just be careful about, you want to make sure that the person you're listening to is a financial aid advisor working at a college. There are people in the industry who try to make money off of families by saying, pay me and I will do all of this for you. Nothing I'm ever going to do is going to charge you a cent, right? It's all about getting that information out to the public. You don't want to pay someone to apply for you. This is not that complicated. You don't need that help. There's lots of free information. In fact, right now there's even a Facebook group that has been maintained and monitored by a group of us who are financial aid officers that help families who might be struggling with questions about the FAFSA. And you can find us there and find information about, or ask questions about what's going on. The group is called Better FAFSA Help. And you can find us there. And again, we are real financial aid professionals who are doing this sort of as a voluntary thing because we feel it's important to provide good answers to families and students.
Wonderful. I will leave those links in the description box so that parents and students have access to it. Wow, Daniel, you've refreshed everything I needed to know about the FAFSA. Hopefully our parents and students are excited, feel a little more equipped, a little less stressed, and they are ready to take action when that application opens. And so, Daniel, as we get ready to close out, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before you leave us with all the goodness that you left us with?
Yeah, thank you. And Rocky, maybe this is a topic for a future podcast, but I also want to talk a little bit about sort of how do you pay the difference, right? So you get your financial aid application, you get your award, and then you're stuck with the difference between what you're going to get and what you owe. And there are strategies there. And again, to minimize borrowing, my quick advice is don't overlook monthly payment plans. Don't overlook an option to put a direct amount to the bill. Lots of families jump immediately to borrow everything. And a loan is your last option, but it really is your last option. There are options before that will save you money and time. And we want to make sure to think about those. And as you think about financing, and I go back again to make sure to target, people always talk about targeting an academic safety school and a dream school in your admissions portfolio. Target a school where you're the dream student for them, because you'll find often that you'll have a sweetened financial aid offer at that institution. Nice.
Yes, so we will definitely schedule that next episode so you can flesh that out for our parents and students. But let me tell you, this is really great. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting the podcast, Rocky. What you're doing is important work, and so I celebrate you, and I celebrate the work you're doing, and look forward to hearing and subscribing and being part of it. So
awesome.
Hey there! I hope you were taking notes and you're ready to implement what you heard. If this podcast inspired you or helped you in any way, I would love for you to subscribe, follow, and share this with a student, parent, or educator you care about, because sharing is caring. Also, your feedback means a lot. So please leave a written review of this show on Apple Podcasts. And if you ever want to connect outside of the podcast, you can find us at The Scholar Budget on Insta or the Book of Faces. So until next time, shine bright and put in the work so we can make those dreams a reality. Bye!